They tried to disarm her. Then she explained why she didn't carry weapons. What happens when an entire galactic council demands a human warrior surrender her weapons, only to discover she's been fighting barehanded the entire time? When Ambassador Sarah Chen walks into the most secure facility in known space carrying nothing but her diplomatic credentials, 36 alien species are about to learn why humanity's reputation precedes them across the stars. They thought they knew what made humans dangerous. They were wrong. Sometimes the deadliest weapon isn't what you carry, it's what you are. The security checkpoint at Nexus Station hummed with the nervous energy of 36 different species, each representing their homeworld's finest diplomatic minds. Ambassador Sarah Chen approached the scanner array with the same calm stride that had carried her through negotiations on 17 different worlds over the past 5 years. Her simple black diplomatic uniform bore only the Earth insignia, a small blue marble pin on her collar that seemed almost quaint compared to the elaborate ceremonial armor and technological augmentations worn by her alien counterparts. The Zephyrian security chief, his crystalline carapace reflecting the station's sterile lighting, gestured toward the scanning arch with one of his forearms. Ambassador Chen, please step forward for weapons detection and confiscation. All delegates must surrender their armaments before entering the council chambers. Sarah nodded politely and walked through the scanner. The machine's gentle chime indicated completion, but instead of the expected cascade of alerts that had accompanied every other delegate, silence filled the checkpoint. The Zephyrian's compound eyes flickered in confusion as he examined his readouts. Please step through again, he requested, his translator rendering his chittering speech into perfectly neutral Standard Galactic. There appears to be a malfunction. Sarah complied, walking through the arch a second time. Again, the machine chimed its completion. And again, no weapons were detected. The security chief's mandibles clicked in agitation as he called over his superior, a massive Carathian whose scaled hide was adorned with the scars of countless battles. What's the delay? The Carathian growled, his voice like grinding stone even through the translator. His yellow eyes fixed on Sarah with the intensity of a predator sizing up potential prey. The council session begins in 20 minutes. The Zephyrian chittered rapidly in his native tongue before switching to standard. The scanner shows no weapons on the human delegate, but that cannot be correct. We have detailed intelligence reports about human military capabilities. They are known to be heavily armed in all situations. The Carathian stepped forward, his massive frame casting Sarah in shadow. She maintained her composed expression, hands clasped loosely behind her back in the standard diplomatic posture. Around them, other delegates began to take notice of the commotion. A cluster of insectoid hive minds whispered among themselves with a sound like rustling leaves, while the energy-based luminari pulsed in colors that their species used for rapid communication. Perhaps, the Carathian said slowly, his gaze never leaving Sarah, the human has hidden her weapons using some form of technology we cannot detect. Their species is known for deception and cunning in warfare. A new voice joined the conversation, smooth and melodious despite the underlying threat it carried. Oh, I do hope not. The speaker was an Etherian, one of the galaxy's most advanced telepathic species. Her translucent skin shimmered with patterns of bioluminescence as she glided closer. It would be terribly disappointing if humanity's first major diplomatic gathering ended in scandal. Sarah finally spoke, her voice carrying the crisp authority that had made her one of Earth's youngest and most successful ambassadors. There's no malfunction and no deception. The scanner is working perfectly. The checkpoint fell silent, except for the distant hum of station systems. Representatives from dozens of species turned their attention to the small group, sensing that something significant was unfolding. The tension was palpable, a mixture of confusion, suspicion, and growing unease. Impossible, the security chief declared. Every species comes armed to diplomatic gatherings. It's a matter of status, protection, and tradition. The Carathians bring their ceremonial war hammers. The Zephyrians carry their crystal blades. Even the pacifist Melodians carry sonic disruptors for emergency situations. No species arrives completely unarmed. Humans do, Sarah replied simply. The Carathian leaned down until his massive head was level with Sarah's. She could smell the metallic tang of his breath and see the ancient battle scars that crisscrossed his snout. You expect us to believe that humanity, the species that has never lost a military engagement, the race that single-handedly held the terminus line against the Void Swarm invasion, comes to diplomatic meetings defenseless? I expect you to believe what your scanner is telling you, Sarah answered, meeting his gaze without flinching. I carry no weapons because I need none. A ripple of movement passed through the gathering crowd. The statement was so bold, so seemingly naive, that it bordered on insult. In galactic politics, personal armament was both protection and a display of one's civilization's power. To arrive unarmed suggested either supreme confidence or dangerous ignorance. The Etherean's bioluminescent patterns shifted to deep purple, indicating intense curiosity. "You're being truthful," she said with surprise. "I can sense no deception in your thoughts, though you have remarkably strong mental barriers for a non-telepathic species. Mental training is standard for Earth Diplomatic Corps," Sarah explained. "We've learned that many species consider thoughts to be private property." The security chief's carapace rattled with agitation. "If you carry no weapons, how do you propose to protect yourself? There are species here that consider human flesh a delicacy. Others have religious obligations to challenge and defeat representatives of warrior cultures." "I'll manage," Sarah said with a slight smile. The Carathian straightened to his full height, his expression shifting from confusion to something approaching respect. "You're either the bravest diplomat I've ever encountered or the most foolish. In either case, you have my interest. But I must warn you, human, that diplomatic immunity only extends so far. If challenged to combat, you must respond or forfeit your species' standing in the Council." "I understand the rules," Sarah replied. "Earth would not have sent me if I couldn't handle whatever situations might arise." A new voice cut through the tension like a blade through silk. "How fascinating." The speaker was a Vorthan, one of the galaxy's most notorious warrior cultures. Their representative was smaller than the Carathian, but no less intimidating, with razor-sharp bone protrusions covering his grey skin and eyes like chips of black ice. A human who claims to need no weapons. "I am Keth Vorthak, Third Blade of the Crimson Fleet. Perhaps we should test this claim." The checkpoint fell silent again, but this time the silence carried a different quality. Where before there had been confusion and curiosity, now there was the electric anticipation that preceded violence. Other delegates began to step back, forming an impromptu circle around Sarah and the Vorthan. Sarah turned to face Keth Vorthak with the same calm demeanor she'd maintained throughout the entire exchange. "If you feel that's necessary, Third Blade, I won't stop you. Though I should mention that Earth's diplomatic protocols require me to file a full report of any incidents that occur during council gatherings." "Threats?" Keth's laugh was like breaking glass. "You threaten me with paperwork?" "I don't threaten," Sarah corrected. "I simply ensure that all parties understand the potential consequences of their actions." The Vorthan's hand moved to the ceremonial blade at his side, a weapon forged from the core of a dying star and sharp enough to cut through molecular bonds. "Combat protocols are clear, human. A challenge must be answered. Will you forfeit your species' honor, or will you face me?" Before Sarah could respond, the Etherean stepped forward, her bioluminescence now pulsing in rapid, agitated patterns. "Wait," she said urgently. "I'm sensing something unusual." The human surface thoughts suggest she's completely calm about this situation. Not resigned, not hiding fear, but genuinely unconcerned. That's unprecedented. Perhaps she's simply ignorant of Vorthan capabilities, suggested a delegate from the Mechanical Collective, his voice emerging from speakers embedded in his cybernetic chassis. "Human intelligence regarding our various species' combat abilities may be incomplete. Our intelligence is quite thorough," Sarah said mildly. "I know exactly what Third Blade Keth is capable of. I've read the reports from the Siege of Kronos, the Battle of the Shattered Moons, and his personal combat record over the past 30 standard years. Quite impressive." Keth's eyes narrowed with surprise. Few beings outside his own species knew of those specific engagements, and even fewer would speak of them so casually. "If you know my history, then you know that no being has faced me in personal combat and lived to speak of it. I know that no being has faced you and survived," Sarah agreed. "But then again, no human has faced you either." "What difference does species make?" the Carathian interjected. "Your physical parameters are within our databases. Humans are strong for their size, remarkably durable, and possess unusual problem-solving abilities under pressure. But you lack the natural weapons of most species. Your reflexes are average at best, and your reach and strength cannot compare to a Vorthan warrior." Sarah nodded thoughtfully. "All accurate assessments based on available data, though I suspect your databases may be missing some important information." The crowd had grown substantially, with delegates abandoning their own processing queues to witness the unfolding confrontation. Representatives from the Hive Mind Collective clustered together, their collective consciousness processing thousands of possible outcomes. The energy-based luminari had formed a complex geometric pattern that served as both communication method and recording system. Even the normally aloof crystalline hierarchy had sent observers. Keth drew his blade with a sound like singing crystal. The weapon seemed to drink in the station's lighting, leaving a trail of absolute darkness as it moved. Enough words. Face me, human, or I will report to the council that your species sends cowards to represent them. I continued to speak with nervous energy. Third blade, while combat protocols do allow for challenges. Perhaps this matter could be resolved through less stabilities. Perhaps this matter could be resolved through less permanent means. The challenge has been issued and acknowledged, Keth replied without taking his eyes off Sarah. The human may choose weapons if she wishes, though it will only delay the inevitable. Sarah shook her head. No weapons needed. Shall we use the standard diplomatic combat area, or would you prefer these quarters? You mean to face me barehanded? Keth's expression shifted from confident disdain to genuine puzzlement. I have seen human combat footage. Your soldiers carry projectile weapons, energy devices, explosive charges. Your martial arts rely on leverage and momentum to overcome physical disadvantages. Without tools or weapons, you are simply soft meat on fragile bones. That's certainly one perspective, Sarah agreed pleasantly. Shall we begin? The Etherean's bioluminescent pattern suddenly flared to brilliant white, the telepathic equivalent of a shout. Wait! I'm detecting something extraordinary. Her mind, when she speaks of combat, it's like looking into a deep ocean. There are layers beneath layers, knowledge and experience that goes far deeper than her surface thoughts suggest. Psychic warfare? The Karathian growled, his own hand moving to his ceremonial hammer. No, the Etherean replied, her patterns shifting to confused swirls of color. It's not telepathic at all. It's like she's carrying an entire library of combat knowledge, but it's all locked away behind training and discipline. And underneath it all, there's something else. Something that feels like... She trailed off, her patterns going completely dark for several seconds before resuming in shades of deep blue that indicated profound uncertainty. Like what? Several delegates demanded simultaneously. Like confidence, she whispered. Not bravado or false courage, but the absolute certainty that comes from never having failed at something vital. Keth's grip on his blade shifted slightly, the first sign of uncertainty he'd shown. Interesting. But confidence without ability is simply delusion. Shall we test which one you possess, human? Sarah stepped into the center of the impromptu circle that had formed around them. Her movements fluid and economical. She settled into a stance that looked deceptively casual to most observers. Weight evenly distributed. Hands relaxed at her sides, breathing steady and controlled. Whenever you're ready, third blade, she said quietly. The tension in the checkpoint reached a crescendo, as beings from across the galaxy prepared to witness what many expected would be the shortest diplomatic combat in recorded history. Some had already begun composing reports for their home governments about humanity's apparent overconfidence and its likely consequences. None of them had any idea what they were actually about to see. Keth Vorthak moved like liquid death, his blade tracing an arc that should have separated Sarah's head from her shoulders in a display of precision that had ended 347 previous encounters. Sarah wasn't there. The Vorthan warrior stumbled slightly, his momentum carrying him past the space where his target had been standing milliseconds before. He spun with the fluid grace of a born killer, bringing his weapon around in a horizontal sweep designed to catch an opponent attempting to circle behind him. Again, his blade met only empty air. Sarah reappeared beside him, her movement so subtle that most observers missed how she'd gotten there. Her hand touched Keth's wrist with what appeared to be gentle contact, barely enough pressure to be noticed. The result was immediate and shocking. The star-forged blade clattered to the deck plating as the Vorthan's fingers spasmed involuntarily. Nerve cluster disruption, the Mechanical Collective's representative observed with clinical interest. Precise application of pressure to interfere with motor control. Fascinating technique, though temporary in effect. Keth snarled and lunged forward with his natural weapons, bone protrusions extending from his forearms like serrated daggers. These were part of his species' biology, sharp enough to pierce ship-hull material and backed by muscles that could drive them through solid stone. He thrust forward in a combination that had disemboweled enemies across a dozen star systems. Sarah moved again, this time in a way that several delegates would later describe as impossible. She seemed to flow around Keth's attack like water flowing around a stone, her body bending and shifting in ways that defied their understanding of human physiology. As she moved, her elbow struck precisely against the Vorthan's extended arm. The sound of breaking bone echoed through the checkpoint. Keth's roar of pain and rage filled the chamber as he clutched his injured limb. The bone protrusion had snapped cleanly, and his arm hung at an unnatural angle. But rather than retreating, he pressed his attack, switching to his offhand and launching himself forward with the desperate fury of a wounded predator. "Remarkable," whispered the Etherean, her patterns now cycling through every color in her species' emotional spectrum. Her mind remains completely calm. There's no adrenaline surge, no fear response, no excitement from combat. She's treating this like a routine training exercise. Sarah caught Keth's good arm as he swung, and for a moment they stood locked together. The Vorthan's superior mass and strength pitted against the human's technique. To the watching delegates, it looked like the warrior might finally overcome his smaller opponent through sheer physical power. Then Sarah shifted her weight, and suddenly Keth was flying through the air. The throw was a thing of beauty, utilizing the Vorthan's own momentum and aggression against him. He crashed into the security checkpoint's barrier with enough force to crack the reinforced transparent aluminum, his body crumpling as consciousness fled. The chamber fell silent except for the soft hum of station systems and Keth's labored breathing. Sarah straightened her diplomatic uniform and walked back to the scanner, her expression unchanged from when she'd first approached the checkpoint. "I believe I was cleared for entry," she said politely to the security chief, whose crystalline carapace was now vibrating with what his species expressed as extreme shock. The Carathian was the first to break the stunned silence. "How?" he rumbled, his voice carrying a note of respect that hadn't been there before. Keth Vorthak is one of the finest warriors in known space. His reflexes are enhanced by genetic modification, his strength augmented by combat stimulants, his weapons forged by master craftsmen. How does a diplomat defeat such an opponent barehanded? "Training," Sarah replied simply. "Earth takes the safety of its ambassadors very seriously." The Etherean glided forward, her bioluminescent patterns now stabilizing into shades of deep fascination. "That's not just training. I've touched the minds of warriors from 100 species, and I've never encountered anything like what I sensed from you during that combat. Your knowledge of fighting techniques goes beyond any normal education. It's like you carry the accumulated experience of thousands of battles." Sarah tilted her head slightly, considering the telepathic being's words. "In a way, that's exactly what human martial education provides. We studied the combat methods of every species we encounter, analyze their strengths and weaknesses, and develop countermeasures. Every human diplomat undergoes extensive training in defensive techniques." "Every diplomat is trained to fight like that?" the Mechanical Collective's representative asked, his optical senses focusing intently on Sarah. "Every human who leaves Earth undergoes basic combat training appropriate to their mission," Sarah confirmed. "Diplomats receive more extensive education because we're often placed in situations where violence might occur despite our best efforts to avoid it." A new voice joined the conversation, smooth and cultured despite the underlying hardness. "How very interesting." The speaker was a hegemony representative, one of the galaxy's most powerful military political entities. Her species appeared almost human at first glance, but the subtle wrongness in her proportions and the predatory grace of her movements marked her as something far more dangerous. "I am Stratach Vale Cassandra. Perhaps you would indulge my curiosity about these training methods?" Sarah regarded the newcomer with careful attention. The hegemony was known for its aggressive expansion policies and its tendency to test the limits of galactic law. Having one of their senior military officers show interest in human combat capabilities could complicate Earth's diplomatic position significantly. "I'd be happy to discuss general principles," Sarah replied carefully. "Those specific techniques and training methodologies are considered sensitive information by Earth's security?" Stratach Cassandra smiled, an expression that somehow managed to be both beautiful and threatening. "Of course. But perhaps you could demonstrate some basic principles? I find myself curious about how a species so recently introduced to galactic society has developed such effective combat methods." The request sent ripples of tension through the assembled delegates. Combat demonstrations between representatives of major powers were usually formal affairs, carefully regulated and observed by neutral parties. An impromptu display could easily escalate into the sort of incident that sparked interstellar conflicts. The security chief's carapace clattered nervously. "Stratach, with respect, Perhaps such demonstrations should wait for more appropriate venues? The council session is scheduled to begin shortly, and we still have several delegates to process. Quite right, Cassandra agreed, though her eyes never left Sarah. Though I do hope we'll have opportunity to continue this conversation later. The hegemony is always interested in learning about innovative approaches to personal combat. Before Sarah could respond, a commotion near the checkpoint's entrance drew everyone's attention. A squad of Nexus Station security personnel was arriving, led by a massive figure that made even the Karathian look small. The station's chief of security was a member of the Titan clans, beings genetically engineered for warfare who stood over 3 meters tall and possessed strength that rivaled small vehicles. Chief Thane Ironback surveyed the scene with eyes like burning coals, taking in the unconscious Vorthan warrior, the cracked barrier, and the tense circle of delegates. His voice, when he spoke, carried the authority of someone accustomed to absolute obedience. Explanation, he demanded simply. The Zephyrian security chief chittered rapidly in his native tongue while his translator worked to keep up. Chief Ironback, there was a diplomatic challenge issued and accepted according to standard protocols. The human delegate defeated Third Blade Keth Vorthak in single combat, using only unarmed techniques. Thane's burning gaze fixed on Sarah with the intensity of a stellar furnace. You did this? He asked, indicating the still unconscious Vorthan. Third Blade Keth issued a formal challenge, Sarah replied evenly. I responded according to established diplomatic protocols. Unarmed combat? Thane took a step forward, his massive frame casting most of the checkpoint in shadow. Against a Vorthan warrior in full combat readiness? Yes. Interesting. Thane crouched beside Keth's motionless form, his trained eye assessing the injuries with professional expertise. Clean breaks, precise nerve disruption, minimal unnecessary damage. This is the work of someone with extensive medical knowledge combined with combat training. He stood and faced Sarah again, his expression unreadable. In my experience, beings who possess such capabilities fall into one of two categories: professional killers or those tasked with protecting professional killers. Which category do you represent, Ambassador Chen? The question hung in the air like a blade suspended over the gathering. Sarah's answer could significantly impact how the galactic community viewed humanity's true intentions and capabilities. I represent Earth's commitment to peaceful resolution of conflicts, Sarah said carefully, but also our determination to ensure that peaceful intentions are not mistaken for weakness or inability to defend ourselves. Thane nodded slowly, though I note you haven't answered my question directly. With respect, Chief Ironback, I believe I have. Earth's diplomatic corps exists to prevent conflicts, but we're prepared to end them if prevention fails. A sound like grinding metal emerged from Thane's throat, which several delegates recognized as the Titan clan equivalent of laughter, spoken like a true warrior diplomat. Very well, Ambassador Chen. You are cleared for entry to the council chambers. I trust that further demonstrations of Earth's diplomatic techniques will not be necessary? I certainly hope not, Sarah replied, though I should mention that the council protocols do allow for formal combat challenges during the deliberative sessions themselves. If the need arises, Earth's delegation will respond appropriately. Fascinating, murmured the Etherean, her bioluminescent patterns now cycling through colors that indicated both admiration and wariness. Most species send either diplomats or warriors to council sessions, keeping their roles strictly separate. Humanity appears to have created a hybrid that fulfills both functions. The mechanical collective's representative whirred softly as his processing systems analyzed this information. An efficient solution to the security requirements of interspecies diplomacy, though it raises questions about the true nature of human civilian population capabilities. Questions that will have to wait for another time, Thane declared with finality. The council session begins in 10 minutes. All delegates must be processed and seated before the formal commencement ceremony. As the crowd began to disperse, delegates filing through the security checkpoint with new awareness of the deceptively simple human in their midst, Strata Cassandra approached Sarah one final time. A word of advice, Ambassador, she said quietly, her voice pitched for Sarah's ears alone. The hegemony respects strength, but we also fear the unknown. Today you've demonstrated both. Be careful that in trying to prevent conflicts, you don't inadvertently start larger ones. Sarah met the Strachard's gaze steadily. The same advice applies to all of us, doesn't it? The question is whether we choose to view new capabilities as opportunities for cooperation or threats requiring elimination. Cassandra's smile returned, though this time it carried a note of genuine appreciation. Indeed, I suspect the council sessions will be far more interesting than originally anticipated. As Sarah finally walked through the security scanner for the third time, heading toward the council chambers where representatives of dozens of species waited to negotiate the future of galactic civilization, she carried with her the weight of first impressions that could shape humanity's relationship with the galaxy for generations to come. Behind her, medical teams worked to stabilize Third Blade Keth Forthak, whose injuries would heal but whose defeat had already become the subject of urgent communications flowing to military commands across known space. The human diplomat who fought like a warrior had answered questions that no one had known to ask while raising dozens of new ones that would keep intelligence analysts busy for months. The real test, however, was just beginning. The Galactic Council Chamber was a marvel of engineering and diplomacy, designed to accommodate the vastly different environmental and social needs of 43 distinct species. The massive spherical space rotated slowly to provide variable gravity zones, while atmospheric processes maintained dozens of separate breathing environments through invisible barrier fields. Specialized platforms adjusted for everything from the crystalline hierarchy's need for harmonic resonance to the void swimmer's requirement for sensory deprivation fields. Sarah took her place at the human delegation platform, a modest circular area equipped with standard atmospheric controls and basic amenities. Compared to some of the elaborate setups surrounding her, Earth's space seemed almost Spartan, though she noticed several delegates studying it with the careful attention reserved for potential threats disguised as harmlessness. The chamber's central space housed the Speaker's platform, currently occupied by Chancellor Vex Corvain of the Neutral Mediation Corps. The Chancellor's species, the Vidani, had evolved from plant-like organisms and possessed natural empathic abilities that made them ideal arbitrators. His bark-like skin displayed subtle color shifts that indicated his emotional state to those familiar with Vidani biology, and currently those patterns suggested careful attention and underlying tension. "Honored delegates," Chancellor Corvain began, his voice carrying the warm tones that made his species such effective negotiators. "We gather today to address several urgent matters affecting galactic stability and prosperity. However, before we begin formal proceedings, I believe it would be appropriate to acknowledge the presence of our newest council member." Sarah rose smoothly as attention focused on her platform. The chamber's advanced acoustics carried her voice clearly to every delegate despite the vastly different auditory systems present. "Chancellor Corvain, honored delegates, I am Ambassador Sarah Chen representing the United Earth government. We come to this council seeking partnership, mutual benefit, and peaceful coexistence among all civilized species." The response was immediate and mixed. Several delegations offered formal acknowledgements through their respective protocols. The Luminari pulsed in welcoming patterns. The Melodians produced a harmony that served as their species' greeting, and the Zephyrian delegation chittered in what their translators rendered as polite recognition. However, other reactions were notably cooler. The hegemony platform remained silent and motionless, while the Korathian delegation's representatives stood but made no vocal acknowledgement, a slight that in their culture indicated reservation of judgment. Most concerning was the reaction from the Apex Confederation platform. Their representative, a sleek predatory being whose species had evolved from pursuit hunters, leaned forward with obvious interest. The Confederation was known for testing new species through increasingly aggressive challenges, treating galactic diplomacy as an extension of the hunt. "How touching!" came a voice dripping with synthesized disdain. The speaker was from the Supremacy Collective platform, where the delegation consisted entirely of artificial intelligences inhabiting mechanoid bodies of intimidating design, another primitive species seeking to join civilized society. "Tell me, Earth representative, what exactly does your backward little world offer that we cannot produce more efficiently ourselves?" The chamber's environmental systems automatically adjusted to dampen the emotional resonance that several species used for communication, but the tension was still palpable. This was exactly the kind of opening challenge that Sarah had been briefed to expect, though the directness caught some delegates by surprise. "An interesting question," Sarah replied evenly, maintaining the diplomatic tone despite the obvious provocation. "Earth offers the same thing that every member species contributes: unique perspectives, innovative solutions, and the benefits that come from diversity of thought and experience." "Diversity of thought," the supremacy representative repeated with mechanical precision. "How quaint. We have observed your species for several standard years now, ever since your first interstellar vessels appeared in monitored space. Your diversity of thought appears to manifest primarily as efficiency in warfare and destruction. That's a remarkable oversimplification, Sarah responded, noting that several other delegates were leaning forward with increased attention. The Supremacy Collective was known for aggressive opening positions, but they rarely made such pointed accusations without supporting data. Is it? The mechanoid's optical arrays focused on Sarah with laser precision. Shall we review the facts? In the past 50 of your years, humanity has engaged in over 200 significant military conflicts. Your species has developed weapons capable of sterilizing entire planetary surfaces. Your first contact with the galaxy occurred when you destroyed a raider fleet that had been operating successfully for over a century. The chamber fell silent, except for the soft hum of life support systems. Sarah could feel the weight of dozens of different species' attention, each processing this information through their own cultural and political filters. Context matters, Sarah said calmly. Earth's history includes conflicts, yes, but it also includes unprecedented cooperation between former enemies. As for the raider fleet, they were attacking civilian shipping and had refused all attempts at communication. The destruction of that fleet saved thousands of innocent lives. How convenient that you framed genocide as rescue, the Supremacy representative pressed. But let us examine your species' approach to problem-solving more closely. When faced with the Void Swarm invasion at the Terminus line, did humanity attempt negotiation? Did you seek peaceful resolution? Or did you immediately deploy weapons of mass destruction against a species you had never encountered before? Sarah felt the shift in the chamber's atmosphere. Several delegations that had been neutral were now paying very close attention, and she could see why. The Void Swarm incident was one of the most controversial military actions in recent galactic history, and how she handled questions about it could significantly impact Earth's standing. The Void Swarm had already consumed 17 inhabited systems by the time they reached the Terminus line, Sarah replied, her voice carrying a slight edge for the first time. They had shown no response to any form of communication attempted by 5 different species. They were devouring entire civilizations, converting billions of sentient beings into raw material for their expansion. The choice wasn't between war and peace. It was between stopping them at the Terminus line or watching them consume the entire galactic arm. And yet, another voice joined the conversation, this one from the Philosophical Union platform. Your species' response was remarkably swift and decisive for being supposedly committed to peaceful resolution, almost as if you had been preparing for such warfare long before encountering the swarm. The speaker was one of the contemplatives, a species that had evolved beyond physical form into pure energy patterns housed within specialized containment fields. Their approach to existence was radically different from most material species, focusing on thought and analysis rather than action and expansion. Earth's military preparedness stems from our own history, Sarah acknowledged. We've learned that the price of being unprepared for violence is often paid by those least able to defend themselves. But preparation for war and desire for war are very different things. Are they? The question came from the Apex Confederation platform, where their delegate had been listening with the focused attention of a hunter studying prey. Your species maintains military forces that exceed those of civilizations twice your size. Your ambassadors receive combat training that enables them to defeat seasoned warriors. Your exploratory vessels carry weaponry sufficient to engage capital ships. These are not the preparations of a peaceful species, but of conquerors seeking to project strength. Sarah took a breath, recognizing that the conversation had reached a critical point. How she responded to these challenges would set the tone for Earth's entire relationship with the galactic community. Delegate Corfex, she said, addressing the Apex Confederation representative directly, your species has a saying, the strong make peace possible, the weak make war inevitable. I believe humanity has embraced a similar philosophy, though we express it differently. She stood and moved to the center of her platform, her voice carrying clearly throughout the chamber. Earth maintains strong defenses because we have learned that predators exist in every environment, at every scale. We train our diplomats in combat techniques because we refuse to send them helpless into situations where violence might occur. We arm our exploratory vessels because space is vast and dangerous, filled with hazards both natural and artificial. The chamber remained silent, but Sarah could sense the subtle shifts in attention and posture that indicated intense listening across multiple species. But consider this, she continued. Despite our military capabilities, Earth has not initiated aggressive action against any galactic power. Despite our weapons, we seek membership in this council, rather than attempting to dominate through force. Despite our preparations for war, we consistently choose diplomatic solutions when they are available. Words are easy, the supremacy representative interjected. Actions reveal true intent. Your species destroyed the Void Swarm so thoroughly that no trace of their civilization remains. Your exploratory vessels have established forward positions throughout the outer spiral arms. Your trade agreements consistently favor Earth's economic interests. These are not the behaviors of a peaceful species seeking cooperation. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. You're absolutely right that actions reveal intent. So let me ask you this. If humanity's true intention was galactic conquest, why are we here? Why seek council membership when we could simply take what we want? Why negotiate trade agreements instead of imposing tribute systems? Why request permission to establish colonies when we have the capability to claim territory unilaterally? The question hung in the chamber's recycled air, and Sarah could see several delegates exchanging glances or their species equivalent. She had turned the Supremacy Collective's argument against them, using their own logic to demonstrate Earth's peaceful intentions. The Etherean delegate suddenly pulsed brilliant white, her species equivalent of urgent communication. "If I may interrupt," she said, her melodious voice carrying undertones of excitement, "I believe I can offer some insight into this discussion." Chancellor Corvine gestured for her to continue, his bark-like skin showing patterns of intense interest. "During the security checkpoint incident earlier today, I had opportunity to touch the edges of Ambassador Chen's mind," the Etherean explained. "What I found was unprecedented. Her thoughts contained detailed knowledge of combat techniques from dozens of species, strategic analysis of military conflicts spanning centuries, and tactical awareness that would credit a fleet commander." She paused, her bioluminescent patterns shifting to deep contemplation colors. But underneath all of that, at the very core of her consciousness, there was something else, a deep, unshakable commitment to protecting others, not conquering them, not dominating them, but shielding them from harm. Mind reading proves nothing, the supremacy representative stated flatly. Thoughts can be controlled, surface emotions can be manipulated, and telepathic impressions can be deliberately crafted to deceive. Not these, the Etherean replied with certainty. The patterns I sensed were too deep, too fundamental to be false. They were woven into the very structure of her personality. This is someone who has been trained to kill efficiently, but whose deepest motivation is to preserve life. A new voice entered the conversation, deep and resonant with the authority of ages. The ancient collective platform had remained silent throughout the proceedings, but now their representative spoke for the first time. The ancients were one of the oldest species in the galaxy, with recorded history spanning over 1,000,000 years. "Young species," the ancient said, their words carrying weight that seemed to press against the chamber walls. "You argue about intentions and capabilities as if they were separate concepts. But wisdom comes from understanding that true strength lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the choice not to destroy when destruction would be easy." The chamber fell into respectful silence. When the ancient spoke, even the most aggressive species listened. "We have observed humanity since their first tentative steps beyond their home system," the ancient continued. "We have watched them encounter dangers that would have broken other species, challenges that should have driven them to desperation and cruelty. Instead, we have seen them grow stronger without losing their essential compassion, develop devastating capabilities while maintaining ethical restraints, become formidable without becoming monstrous." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine as she realized the implications of the ancient's words. They had been watched, studied, evaluated long before making official contact with the galactic community. "This is why," the ancient concluded, "we support Earth's application for council membership, not because they are weak enough to be controlled, but because they are strong enough to control themselves." The silence that followed was profound and meaningful. The ancient collective's endorsement carried enormous weight in galactic politics, and their support could open doors that might otherwise remain closed for generations. But Sarah also knew that with that support would come expectations, responsibilities, and challenges that would test not just Earth's diplomatic capabilities, but the fundamental character of her species. The real work was just beginning. The session recess came 3 hours into deliberations, following heated debates about resource allocation, territorial disputes, and trade regulations that had tested every diplomatic skill Sarah possessed. The formal withdrawal of delegates to their respective consultation chambers provided a temporary respite from the intense scrutiny she'd faced since the ancient collective's endorsement. Sarah made her way to the designated neutral area, a section of the station designed for informal interaction between delegates. The space was carefully engineered to accommodate multiple atmospheric and gravitational preferences, with environmental boundaries that allowed different species to interact without leaving their comfort zones. She had barely settled at one of the human-compatible tables when Stratarch Cassandra approached, her movements carrying the predatory grace that marked all hegemony military officers. The woman settled across from Sarah with the fluid motion of someone equally comfortable in boardrooms and battlefields. An impressive performance so far, Cassandra said, her tone carefully neutral. The ancient collective's support was unexpected. Most species spend decades building toward that kind of endorsement. We try not to take anyone's support for granted, Sarah replied diplomatically. Every relationship requires trust, and trust must be earned. Cassandra studied Sarah with the calculating gaze of someone assessing both threat and opportunity, which brings me to an interesting proposition. The hegemony has been monitoring several developing situations that might benefit from Earth's unique approach to problem-solving. Sarah felt her diplomatic instincts activate. The hegemony was known for attempting to recruit newer species as proxy forces, offering them protection and resources in exchange for military support. What kind of situations? Pirates have been operating in the Kepler sector, targeting civilian transports from multiple species. Standard law enforcement has proven inadequate, and the affected governments are requesting assistance. The hegemony could provide support, but our involvement might be seen as territorial expansion. A newer species with proven capabilities but no apparent territorial ambitions might be better received. The offer was cleverly constructed, appealing to humanity's demonstrated willingness to protect civilians while positioning Earth as a hegemony proxy. Sarah could see the trap immediately, but she could also see the genuine need underneath the political maneuvering. How many civilian casualties so far? She asked. 17 ship losses, over 4,000 dead, Cassandra replied. The pirates are using salvaged military hardware and show no interest in negotiation or ransom. They simply attack, loot, and destroy. Before Sarah could respond, another voice joined the conversation. How fascinating that the hegemony seeks to recruit humanity for military operations so soon after their council application. The speaker was the Philosophical Union's delegate, their energy pattern manifesting as shifting geometric forms within their containment field. The Philosophical Union objects to protective action? Cassandra's tone carried a slight edge. We object to manipulation disguised as benevolence, the energy being replied smoothly. The hegemony's offer conveniently positions humanity as your military proxy, while maintaining plausible deniability for your own territorial interests in the Kepler sector. Sarah recognized the developing confrontation and moved to defuse it before it could escalate. Both perspectives have merit, she said diplomatically. The piracy situation clearly requires attention, but any response should be carefully considered to ensure it serves the victim's interests rather than political agendas. Spoken like a true diplomat, came a new voice. The Apex Confederation's representative approached their group with the flowing gait that marked his species' predatory heritage. Though I wonder if your species' diplomatic training includes lessons in practical reality. Meaning? Sarah asked, though she suspected she knew where this was heading. Meaning that while you debate the political implications of intervention, real beings are dying, Delegate Corthex replied bluntly. Your species gained galactic attention by acting decisively against the Void Swarm. Why hesitate now when the stakes are smaller but the need is just as clear? Because the situations aren't comparable, Sarah said firmly. The Void Swarm was an existential threat to galactic civilization. These are criminals who can be dealt with through coordinated law enforcement rather than military action. Can they? The question came from an unexpected source. The Mechanical Collective's representative, whose optical arrays had been focused on a data display throughout their conversation. Analysis of the attack suggests coordination, advanced tactics and equipment that exceeds typical criminal organizations. This may not be simple piracy. Sarah felt a chill of apprehension. The Mechanical Collective was renowned for their analytical capabilities and rarely made statements without extensive supporting data. What kind of coordination? Attack patterns suggest military training. Target selection indicates intelligence gathering capabilities, and equipment manifests suggest state-level support. These are not random criminals but organized forces operating under cover of piracy. All the more reason for careful consideration before taking action, the Philosophical Union delegate interjected. If state actors are involved, military intervention by a single species could escalate into broader conflict, or it could demonstrate that such tactics will not be tolerated by the galactic community, Cassandra countered. Sometimes decisive action prevents larger conflicts by establishing clear boundaries. Sarah found herself at the center of a debate that reflected deeper tensions within galactic politics. The various factions were using the piracy situation as a lens through which to examine Earth's potential role in the broader power structure. A soft chime indicated the approaching end of recess, but before anyone could move to return to the main chamber, a new arrival changed the entire dynamic of their discussion. Chancellor Corvain himself approached their group, his bark-like skin displaying patterns that indicated urgent concern. "Forgive the interruption," he said, his warm voice carrying undertones of stress, "but I've just received information that makes our discussion extremely relevant. The pirates in the Kepler sector have just attacked a Nexus Station supply convoy. 40 ships destroyed, over 12,000 casualties, including representatives from 7 council member species." The group fell silent as the implications sank in. This was no longer a distant problem affecting non-council species, but a direct attack on the galactic community itself. "Response protocols are clear," Delegate Corthex stated immediately. "The Council must authorize military action against threats to community assets." "Authorization for what kind of action?" the Philosophical Union delegate asked pointedly. "And carried out by whom?" Chancellor Corvain's skin patterns shifted to deep concern. "That's precisely the problem. The affected region falls within a territorial boundary dispute between 3 different powers. Any military response by an established force could be seen as an act of expansion rather than law enforcement. Which brings us back to the original proposition," Cassandra said smoothly. "A newer species with no territorial claims in the region could respond without triggering larger conflicts." Sarah realized that what had begun as a political maneuver was rapidly becoming a genuine crisis requiring immediate action. The attack on the supply convoy transformed the situation from an optional intervention to an urgent necessity. "What assets are available for response?" she asked, her training automatically shifting into crisis management mode. "The convoy's escort survived and is tracking the attackers," Chancellor Corvain replied. "But they're heavily damaged and cannot engage without support. The nearest major fleet units are 6 hours away, and by then the pirates will have escaped into disputed territory." "And Earth's assets?" Delegate Corthex asked directly. Sarah paused, knowing that her answer would have implications far beyond the immediate crisis. Earth's military capabilities were one of their most carefully guarded secrets, and revealing too much could shift the entire balance of galactic politics. "We have assets that could respond within the required time frame," she said carefully. "But such action would require authorization from both the Council and Earth's government. Authorization that takes time we don't have," Cassandra pointed out. "Pirates are already moving toward the disputed zone. In another hour, any pursuit will risk triggering territorial conflicts. Unless," the Mechanical Collective representative said with mechanical precision, "a diplomatic representative with broad authorization were to take personal responsibility for the response." All eyes turned to Sarah as the implications became clear. As Earth's senior diplomatic representative to the Council, she had the authority to authorize military action in emergency situations. But doing so would commit her species to a course of action that could define their role in galactic politics for generations. The precedent such action would set, the Philosophical Union delegate warned, could fundamentally alter the balance of power within the Council. A species barely admitted to membership undertaking military action on behalf of the community would demonstrate exactly the kind of leadership the galaxy needs. The ancient collective's voice resonated through the space, their representative having approached during the discussion. Sometimes the newest perspectives are precisely what established systems require. Sarah looked around the group, seeing in their faces the hopes, fears, and calculations of civilization spanning millennia. The decision she made in the next few minutes would echo through galactic history, potentially determining whether humanity became a respected partner or a feared military tool. Her hand moved to the communication device at her belt, knowing that the next transmission she sent would irrevocably change Earth's relationship with the galaxy. But as she considered the 12,000 beings who had died in the convoy attack, and the thousands more who might die if the pirates weren't stopped, the choice became clear. "Chancellor Corvain," she said formally, I am requesting emergency authorization under Article 7 of the Galactic Assistance Protocols. Earth stands ready to respond to the attack on the supply convoy. Authorization granted, the Chancellor replied immediately, his skin patterns showing both relief and apprehension. May the stars guide your actions wisely, Ambassador Chen. Sarah activated her communicator, knowing that somewhere in space, human warships were already powering up their weapons systems in response to her coded transmission. The test of Earth's place in the galactic community was about to begin in earnest. Let's see what diplomatic solutions look like when backed by the right kind of force, she said quietly, more to herself than to the others. The real measure of humanity's character was about to be taken not in council chambers, but in the cold vacuum of space where words carried no weight and only actions mattered. The tactical display in Nexus Station's command center showed the unfolding engagement in real time, transmitted from the human fleet that had materialized in the Kepler sector with a speed that had shocked even Earth's most optimistic supporters. Sarah stood beside Chancellor Cravain and the assembled delegates, watching as her species' true capabilities were revealed to the galactic community for the first time. Incredible response time, the Mechanical Collective's representative observed, his optical arrays tracking multiple data streams simultaneously. From authorization to fleet deployment in under 40 minutes. Your logistics capabilities are far more advanced than our intelligence suggested. We learned early that rapid response saves lives, Sarah replied, her eyes fixed on the display where 3 human destroyers were closing on the pirate fleet. The raiders had been caught in the middle of looting the destroyed convoy, their ships heavy with stolen cargo and unprepared for immediate pursuit. The pirates are not surrendering, Delegate Corthex noted with professional interest. They're forming attack formations. Curious behavior for criminals facing superior force. Sarah felt a familiar tightness in her chest as she watched the enemy vessels maneuver. The tactical patterns were indeed wrong for typical pirates, showing coordination and discipline that suggested military training. The Mechanical Collective's analysis had been accurate. Fleet Commander Harrison is requesting instructions, the communications officer reported. The pirates have refused all surrender demands and are powering weapons systems. Standard engagement protocols. Sarah replied without hesitation. Disable if possible. Destroy if necessary. Priority is preventing escape into disputed territory. The display erupted in light as the engagement commenced. The human destroyers moved with fluid precision, their attacks surgical and devastating. Within minutes, 2 pirate vessels were crippled, their drives and weapons destroyed but life support intact. The third attempted to flee toward the disputed zone boundary, but found its escape route cut off by a human ship that seemed to materialize from nowhere. Fascinating tactical doctrine, Stratarch Cassandra murmured, her professional appreciation clear. Your fleet commanders understand both the military and political dimensions of engagement. They're creating perfect intelligence-gathering opportunities while demonstrating restraint. We try to balance effectiveness with proportionality, Sarah said, though her attention was focused on something else. The disabled pirate vessels were being boarded by human marines, and the initial reports were troubling. Ambassador, the communications officer called out. Fleet Commander Harrison reports anomalous findings aboard the captured vessels. He's requesting permission to transmit detailed findings on encrypted channels. Sarah glanced at Chancellor Corvain, who nodded. Granted. Full council access. The data that flowed across the display changed the entire complexion of their understanding. The pirates were carrying military-grade equipment from at least 4 different council member species. Their ships had been modified with technology that exceeded most civilian capabilities, and most damning of all, their crews included mercenaries from half a dozen different civilizations. This wasn't random piracy, the Ancient Collective's representative said with certainty. This was a coordinated operation designed to destabilize trade routes and create economic pressure. But coordinated by whom? Chancellor Corvain asked, his skin patterns showing deep concern. The answer came from an unexpected source. Analysis of equipment signatures and tactical patterns suggests the Crimson Syndicate, the Mechanical Collective's representative reported. Criminal organization with suspected ties to several minor powers seeking to disrupt council stability. The syndicate has been seeking to establish territorial claims through proxy operations, Stratarch Cassandra added grimly. If they're operating in the Kepler sector, it suggests a much larger operation than simple piracy. Sarah felt the weight of realization settling over her. Earth hadn't just responded to a criminal incident, but had unknowingly intercepted part of a larger conspiracy against galactic stability. The implications were staggering. Fleet Commander Harrison is requesting additional instructions, the communications officer reported. Intelligence gathered from the captured vessels indicates at least 12 more attack groups operating throughout the sector. Current human assets are insufficient for sector-wide operations. The chamber fell silent as delegates processed this information. A sector-wide criminal operation with political backing represented a threat that could destabilize multiple star systems and disrupt the delicate balance of galactic politics. Council protocols are clear, Delegate Cortex said formally. Threats to galactic stability require coordinated response from all member species. But coordination takes time, the Philosophical Union delegate pointed out. Military assets must be repositioned, command structures established, political authorizations obtained. The process could take weeks. Weeks during which the syndicate completes their operations and escapes into territory where we cannot pursue them, Cassandra added with frustration. Sarah looked at the tactical display, where human ships continued to process intelligence from the captured vessels. Her fleet commander was requesting guidance, but the guidance he needed went far beyond simple tactical decisions. There is another option, she said quietly, all attention focused on her as she moved to the central console. Earth could coordinate the immediate response while Council forces mobilize for larger operations. Our ships are already in position, our commanders understand the situation, and we have the tactical intelligence needed for effective action. You're proposing that humanity lead a Council military operation? Chancellor Corvain asked with surprise. I'm proposing that Earth serve as the operational coordinator for the immediate crisis, while the Council develops a comprehensive response, Sarah clarified. We provide the tactical leadership and rapid response capabilities. Other species provide additional assets and long-term support. The proposal was audacious. Humanity had been a Council member for less than a day, and Sarah was suggesting that they take operational command of what could become the largest military operation in recent galactic history. The precedent, the Philosophical Union delegate began. The precedent is that the Council responds effectively to threats rather than allowing them to fester while we debate procedures. The Ancient Collective's representative interrupted with unusual directness. Sometimes rapid action serves the greater good better than careful deliberation. But placing a new species in operational command, Stratar Cassandra said slowly, would require extraordinary trust. Or extraordinary necessity, Sarah replied. The Syndicate is counting on our inability to coordinate an effective response quickly enough to matter. They've planned their operations around our bureaucratic limitations. Chancellor Corvain's skin patterns shifted through multiple colors as he processed the implications. Such a decision would require emergency council vote. But given the circumstances, I call for immediate vote, Delegate Cortex declared. The situation deteriorates with each passing hour. Seconded. The Mechanical Collective's representative added. Tactical analysis supports the efficiency of unified human command for immediate operations. The vote was called with unprecedented speed. Council protocols compressed to address the urgent need for action. Sarah watched the display as delegate after delegate registered their position, knowing that each vote represented not just immediate tactical decisions, but long-term political relationships. The Ancient Collective voted first, their endorsement carrying enormous weight. The Mechanical Collective followed, their support based on analytical assessment rather than political considerations. The Zephyrians, Luminari, and several smaller species added their approval. The opposition came from predictable sources. The Supremacy Collective objected to any military operation not under their direct control. Several territorial powers worried about human ships operating in their regions. The Philosophical Union expressed concerns about the precedent of rapid military authorization. But when the final tally appeared, the authorization had passed by a significant margin. Earth was now officially coordinating the largest multi-species military operation in recent galactic history.
Fleet Commander Harrison, Sarah said into her communicator, you are authorized for full sector operations.
Coordinate with incoming Council assets and establish sector security. Rules of engagement are to neutralize the Syndicate threat while minimizing civilian casualties and avoiding territorial violations. Acknowledged, came the reply. Estimate full sector security within 72 hours with incoming support assets. As she ended the transmission, Sarah realized that the chamber had fallen silent again. Every delegate was watching her with expressions that ranged from admiration to wariness to calculation. In the space of a few hours, humanity had gone from newest council members to operational military leaders. Well, Stratar Cassandra said with a smile that mixed respect and caution, your species certainly doesn't believe in gradual integration. We believe in responding to needs as they arise, Sarah replied. Sometimes integration happens naturally through shared challenges. The ancient collective's representative approached the group, their presence commanding immediate attention. What you have accomplished today, young species, goes beyond tactical success. You have demonstrated that strength and wisdom can coexist, that new perspectives can enhance rather than threaten established order. They paused, their ancient consciousness considering words that would carry across millennia of galactic memory. But remember that with such trust comes enormous responsibility. The galaxy will be watching how you exercise the authority you have been given. Sarah nodded solemnly. We understand the weight of that responsibility. Earth won't abuse the trust that has been placed in us. See that you don't, the ancient replied, for the sake of all our species. As the council session resumed, with humanity now taking an active leadership role in galactic security, Sarah reflected on how completely her species' situation had changed. They had come seeking membership and partnership, but had found themselves thrust into positions of authority and responsibility that would shape galactic civilization for generations. The test of character that had begun with a simple weapon scanner had evolved into something far more significant. Humanity had proven they could fight when necessary, lead when required, and maintain their principles under pressure. But the real test would be whether they could exercise power wisely in the long term. Through the chamber's viewing ports, Sarah could see stars scattered across the infinite darkness of space. Somewhere among those points of light, human ships were engaged in operations that would determine not just the fate of the Kepler sector, but humanity's place in the vast tapestry of galactic civilization. She had come to this station carrying no weapons because she needed none. She was leaving it bearing the weight of responsibilities that would test everything her species believed about themselves and their place in the universe. The galaxy was watching, and humanity's greatest challenges were just beginning. In the end, the most dangerous weapon hadn't been anything she carried into the council chambers. It was the trust that others had placed in her species' character, and the obligation to prove that such trust was not misplaced. That burden would be carried by every human who ventured beyond Earth's protection, in every decision they made and every action they took. The reputation they built now would echo through galactic history, defining not just how other species saw humanity, but how humanity saw itself. As Sarah returned to her duties, coordinating with fleet commanders and council delegates, she carried with her the knowledge that sometimes the greatest victory isn't winning a fight, but being trusted never to start unnecessary fights in the first place. The council chamber continued its ancient work, but now with humanity's voice added to the chorus of species seeking to build a better galaxy for all sentient life. Whether that voice would harmonize with the others or disrupt the careful balance would be determined by choices made in the days, years, and centuries to come. The story of humanity's place among the stars was no longer just beginning. It was being written with each decision, each action, and each moment of trust between species separated by evolution, but united by the hope of peaceful coexistence in an infinite universe.